Latest on that terror incident in Melbourne. Let's get some reaction to this now from a political perspective from both the Liberal Party and Labor Party. We've got Assistant Minister to the Treasurer, Michael Sukkar, with me. Michael, your thoughts on this? And I guess you'd agree with the Premier to the extent that the Special Operations Group looks like it's carried out its duties with bravery and with success. It could have been a lot worse.
Well, good morning, Kieran. Yeah, look, it is a very sober day here in Melbourne, and of course, the Prime Minister has already said that as a government, our thoughts go to the 3 injured policemen, obviously the victim overnight, and yeah, we have great respect for the work that the Victoria Police undertook yesterday, and in that sense, we do agree with the Premier of Victoria. We're obviously working with the Victorian State Government through the AFP on any way that we can assist. But this is just another example, Kieran, of really what myself and the Prime Minister and so many ministers in our government talk about. We are not immune from the insidious ideology that we see infecting other parts of the world, most recently in London and Manchester, and that's why we need to give our law enforcement, both state law enforcement and at a federal level, every power that they need to do the job of keeping Australians safe.
This person looks like, well, according to the police at this stage, that it was inspired, if anything, by those terrorist groups that he mentioned in his phone call to Channel 7, as opposed to being directed by those groups. So it looks like it was more of a lone wolf operation as opposed to anything more broad than that at this stage anyway, according to the update from police this morning, Michael.
Well, that's right, Kieran. I mean, that is of cold comfort, though, because we know the ideology that so many of these sort of misfits, these individuals, buy into means that they don't need to be organised plots. One person with one weapon, or one person with a truck, or one person with a knife can inflict so much misery, let alone when you do have large organised groups, conducting terrorist acts as well. So I suppose it's, again, a very sober realisation for everyone, again, to note that all you need is one person who's inspired by the insidious ideology of Islamic extremism, and they can inflict human damage and a toll that really is hard to fathom. I mean, particularly for the families of the police officers, but the family of the deceased victim. They never get that person back. So, Kieran, it's a tough morning here in Melbourne, but I can assure all of the viewers that the federal government is absolutely resolute. We are not going to take a backward step. Today isn't really the day for just empty motherhood statements. Today and in the weeks to come will be for the federal government, in conjunction with state governments, to continue doing what we have been doing really over the last few years, and that is examining every single way in which we can crack down on these sorts of individuals and groups.
Let's just stay where you are, Michael, if you can. I do want to ask you about a couple of political issues in just a moment. First, though, to get some reaction to this main story of the day from Brendan O'Connor, a former Home Affairs Minister, dealing with the security agencies yourself over a number of years. Brendan O'Connor, what are your thoughts on this development and the response from Vic Police overnight?
Well, it's tragic, and I extend my condolences to the family of the victim, and indeed our thoughts are with the police that were injured, being so courageous in their response to this matter. Another example, it would appear that it was a lone wolf inspired by hatred, and therefore we certainly do have to ensure that the police, other law enforcement agencies at the federal and state level have sufficient capability, resources and powers, but also, particularly when you're dealing with lone wolf situations, we really do need to ensure we've got counter-radicalisation practices working throughout the community. So it is a combination of having the right powers, the right resources, particularly to disrupt conspiracies to commit terrorist acts, which we've seen has been so successful in this country to date. How you deal with lone wolf situations, I think, is in some ways a more difficult thing. Because they're so random, because there may not have been any preparation in some instances, and there's of course fewer people involved. And I think one of the better ways of dealing with that is counter-radicalisation. I mean, we of course, the federal opposition and the federal government are one on this issue. We need to respond, and we need to underline how significant this matter is and ensure that we work in a bipartisan manner to assure all Australians that we're doing everything we possibly can to prevent these things happening.
Do you give any weight to the fact that IS claim responsibility, Brendan? The Commissioner seemed to brush that off, saying that they always jump up at any event of any incident of this sort. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I think the Commissioner may well be right. It may well be the case that they've seem to take some credit for this heinous crime post facto. But I think we need to examine the facts to see whether there was any contact at all. I think we just need to examine how this has happened. We do know this, though, that too often people commit such horrible offences without any connection directly with those with IS or other terrorist organisations, so that can happen. And that's why I say that on top of the powers and capability of law enforcement agencies dealing with such matters, we need to be really deploying counter-radicalisation policies as effectively as possible.
OK, we're standing by to take our viewers to the Prime Minister at 9:15 Eastern Time. That's a bit under 10 minutes from now at the Blue Room of Parliament House. We'll have a news conference with Prime Minister Turnbull on this issue. Brendan O'Connor, I'll get back to you on the domestic political issue of the day. I wanted to ask you about, first, to the Assistant Minister to the Treasurer, Michael Sukkar, on this story that there looks like there could be a compromise on this issue of a low emissions target. We're awaiting the Finkel report out this Friday, and Josh Frydenberg, having spoken to apparently a number of your Conservative counterparts in the party as well, to bring them along on this issue. Are you confident that he can do that, Michael?
Well, Kieran, we'll see the outcome of the Finkel report on Friday, and I want to be hesitant in sort of getting out ahead of that. I think I want to wait and see what he suggests, and from there I'm confident that Minister Frydenberg, who's done a really fantastic job in the portfolio, will chart a policy path forward. And I'd expect, knowing the work that Josh has done, that he'll be able to bring all colleagues with him. I mean, as long as the policy is sound, there won't be any problems in bringing the whole team with him. And he's shown he's been able to do that in the past in what is a fraught policy area. But I just don't want to get ahead of what the Finkel report will say, Kieran.
It'd be in the industry, the energy industry, and the business community more broadly. It'd be in their interest to have some certainty after years of climate wars.
Certainty's a good thing, Kieran, no doubt. But I don't think we want certainty with bad policy. Bad policy can still provide certainty. It can provide certainty of a bad outcome. We want certainty with good policy, and that is what I know Minister Frydenberg will put forward. I'm sure that's what Mr Finkel will do as well in his report. He's an eminent Australian and someone that we appointed because we do trust his judgment. So certainty of itself, Kieran, shouldn't be the only destination. It's got to be certainty of good policy, because what we've seen really over the last 2 decades is ever-increasing energy costs, less security in our energy system, and this government has resolved to really fix what has been a policy failure, largely driven by vested interests in renewable energy. We see it in South Australia with the catastrophic consequences that have occurred for their economy. So Our commitment
Okay.
is for stable energy, lower prices, and of course certainty is important. But again, I'm confident that Minister Frydenberg will bring forward a very sensible policy proposal, and we'll all get behind it.
And finally, on the issues that arose on the ABC last night and via Fairfax as well, on the revelations on Chinese involvement in our politics. One of the points that was made related to Sam Dastyari, the other, the former Trade Minister Andrew Robb, who went into a consulting role with a major Chinese firm with links to Beijing at $880,000 a year. Is that appropriate as soon as you leave Parliament?
Well, look, Andrew Robb hasn't broken any rules, and I suppose once you leave Parliament, you become a private citizen. I understand the hesitation, particularly with people who have been privy to sort of decisions at the highest level of government. But, I mean, knowing Andrew, he is a man of immense integrity, and in that sense, I have implicit trust in him. But he hasn't broken any rules, and I'd be happy to consider any alternatives that would be proposed. But, you know, once you become a private citizen, I think that's the case. And can I say on really the star of last night's program, in inverted commas, Senator Dastyari, I mean, it is quite extraordinary that that anybody, even at a perception level, because I don't want to impugn Senator Dastyari's motives, although they seem pretty shady, that you can trade policy positions or views or certainly advocacy inside the party room for money, and that's a problem. And obviously, before the last election, Stephen Conroy slapped Senator Dastyari down because he wouldn't buy into that sort of trading money for policy. But I think Senator Dastyari has huge questions to answer, and let's not forget, Bill Shorten sin-binned Senator Dastyari for 5 months. For 5 months after everything he did, and he's now found his way back onto the front bench. You know, Bill Shorten thinks that we all have the memories of goldfish. Well, Senator Dastyari has not made an account for what has been a pretty shady past with China, and where is Senator Dastyari today answering all the questions that were again asked last night in that report?
Okay. Assistant Minister to the Treasurer, Michael Sukkar, thanks for your time this morning and flexibility given the other commitments in relation to that Melbourne